Hunting for Answers is a production of the Black Effect Podcast Network and iHeartRadio. Welcome to Hunting for Answers, a true crime podcast. I'm your host, Hunter, and today we're highlighting a case that exposes multiple breakdowns across the criminal justice system. A case where warning signs were documented, reported repeatedly, and still failed to prevent a tragedy. In November of 2025, a 23-year-old LSU student lost her life in the parking lot of her Baton Rouge, Louisiana apartment complex. Killed days after her accused abuser was arrested and released on bond. He had a documented history of stalking and abuse, including 6 out-of-state protective orders involving multiple women. Just days before her death, he had been arrested for battery of a dating partner in her case. This is the story of Stasy Charles. Stasy Charles was 23 years old. She was a student at Louisiana State University, looking ahead to her future. She was taking steps toward independence and making plans for what was next. Friends described her as kind and warm, someone who brought joy to the people around her. But by the fall of 2025, Stasy was living in fear, caught in an escalating pattern of abuse with a man named Stephen Heinrich Jr. Stephen Heinrich Jr. was 28 years old and had a documented history in New York State. He had a well-documented history of stalking and harassment. Court records and interviews confirmed multiple protective orders involving at least 6 women in New York State. He had prior arrests and convictions for criminal mischief and for violating protective orders. This pattern of behavior spanned more than a year. But when he met Stasy in Baton Rouge, that history did not fully follow him through the system in time. To see how this unfolded, we have to go back to New York and to another victim. Dominique Ramkaran's daughter dated Stephen Heinrich Jr. for about a year and a half. What she experienced was described as obsessive and relentless stalking. According to Ramkaran, it included hundreds of calls and messages. Many of those calls and messages were sent from fake or anonymous numbers, not just to her daughter, but to her friends and family as well. Ramkaran said local police did not act until restraining orders were obtained against Stephen Heinrich Jr. She said that even after those restraining orders were in place, Heinrich Jr. continued to violate them and was arrested, but never served any jail time. According to Ramkaran, the situation dragged on for months without any meaningful intervention. Y'all are not going to do anything until someone dies. And look what happened, she said. At some point, Heinrich traveled to Louisiana and began dating Stasy. According to Ramkaran, her daughter's friends tried to warn Stasy about Stephen Heinrich Jr. and his past behavior. Leave this man alone. He's crazy. He's going to stalk you. He did it to my friend, they said. But Stasy did not believe us, Ramkaran said. By early November 2025, the situation between Stasy and Stephen had escalated. On November 4th, Stasy called police after a physical altercation. What happened next would set off a series of events with deadly consequences. However, court records show that Stasy had tried to protect herself before. In October of 2025, Stasy filed for a protective order in East Baton Rouge Parish Family Court. In that filing, she alleged that Stephen Heinrich Jr. had punched her, shoved her, and threatened her life with a weapon. Officers were unable to locate Heinrich Jr. to serve him with the papers. When Stasy did not appear for a scheduled court date, the case was dismissed, and no protective order was issued. On the night of November 4th, 2025, Stasy called Baton Rouge police to her apartment. Stephen Heinrich Jr. was there, and a physical altercation had occurred. When officers arrived, they found Stasy with cuts on her hand and bruising on her stomach. Heinrich Jr. was arrested for battery of a dating partner. Stasy was also issued a summons for battery because the responding officer could not determine a primary aggressor at the scene. On November 6th, Stephen Heinrich Jr. appeared before Commissioner Keena Kimball for a bond hearing. His bond was set at $2,500. Prosecutors referenced 2 prior out-of-state arrests during the hearing. However, multiple protective orders from New York were not included in the information before the court at that time. The bond amount was described by officials as within the normal range for this type of case. While Heinrich Jr. remained in custody that morning, authorities in New York moved to prevent his release. An assistant district attorney from New York contacted Baton Rouge police around midday, asking that Heinrich Jr. not be released. At approximately 4:30 p.m., Heinrich posted bond, and the release process began. At 4:39 p.m., a warrant from New York for a probation violation was entered into the National Crime Information Center database. At 5 o'clock p.m., New York authorities contacted East Baton Rouge Parish Prison and asked that a hold be placed on Heinrich Jr. The warrant was fully processed into the system at 6:29 p.m. At 11:03 p.m. on November 6th, Stephen Heinrich was released from East Baton Rouge Parish Prison. The hold from New York was entered after the release process had already been completed, too late to stop him from walking free. On the morning of November 7th, New York authorities requested a welfare check on Stasy. Officers spoke with her. She told police that she had not seen or heard from her ex. 6 days later, Stasy Charles lost her life. In the early morning hours of November 13th, around 2 o'clock a.m., Stasy was sitting in her car in the parking lot of her apartment complex on Old Hammond Highway. Stephen Heinrich Jr. arrived in his vehicle. He drove his vehicle into Stacy's car multiple times. He exited his vehicle and approached Stacy's car. A confrontation followed in the parking lot. Stasy was attacked and stabbed multiple times. After the stabbing, Heinrich Jr. fled the scene in his vehicle. He drove into oncoming traffic and caused a head-on collision nearby. While still in the vehicle, Heinrich Jr. set himself on fire. Responding officers extinguished the flames and transported him to the hospital. Stasy Charles was transported to a hospital as well, where she lost her life during surgery. Stephen Heinrich Jr. died the following day, November 14th, from his injuries. In the days after Stacy's death, questions emerged about how this could have happened. Questions also centered on the timing of Heinrich Jr.'s release. The records show that Stasy Charles reported the abuse. She filed for a protective order. She called police. The warning signs were documented across multiple systems. And still, the system failed to intervene before the violence turned deadly. Our thoughts and prayers are with the family and friends of Stasy Charles. As we close out this episode, remember that sharing Stacy's story helps spread awareness and push for change in how domestic violence cases are handled. Follow Hunting for Answers for updates on this case and others like it. Subscribe on YouTube and follow us on Instagram and TikTok for more true crime stories and case updates. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode. Until next time. Hunting for Answers is a production of the Black Effect Podcast Network. For more podcasts from the Black Effect Podcast Network, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.